Okay, and this video will be in 24:3 to 24:5. So the first thing I want to talk about here is the idea that the digestive tract that we're just talking about is housed in the peritoneal cavity, right? So we've talked about the pericardial cavity and the pleural cavity, and here we are in the peritoneal cavity, right? So basically, this is going to be throughout the abdominal cavity, and it works the same way as all these other ones. You have a visceral peritoneum that's going to be a serous membrane covering all these organs, and then you have a parietal peritoneum, which is going to be on the abdominal cavity wall. Now, this is a better view probably from the side here. And so again, parietal, let me get the laser. The parietal peritoneum is all the way around the abdominal cavity, right? Like along the back, keeps going, right? And then the visceral pericardium is along the organs. Okay? This is the view from your book. Again, out here in blue is the parietal peritoneum. And so I actually for once like the picture in your book because it's kind of color-coded here. Okay, so one of the things to keep in mind with this peritoneum, right, again, they're serous membranes, and so they're producing serous fluid. And this is meant to, right, decrease friction between these layers of the organs, because there is a lot of movement going on, particularly in the digestive tract here. Your body actually produces something like 7 liters of serous fluid a day. To decrease friction, and it should reabsorb those fluids as well. And so you will run into some situations where that processing of the serous fluid can get thrown off, and you can have huge amounts of abdominal swelling if you picture 7 liters being produced each day. One other thing to keep in mind, right? So lining the abdominal cavity actually leaves a few organs out. So there are some abdominal cavity organs that are what we call retroperitoneal. They're behind the peritoneum. Probably the most important thing to know about that is just thinking about, if one of these organs spills open, say your appendix, which hangs off the large intestine, and spills bacteria out into this cavity, being somewhere else, right? Like your kidney is retroperitoneal. That can actually be kind of nice to have a bit of separation there. Okay, so then let's talk mesenteries. So these mesenteries are a continuation of this peritoneum, right? It's the serous membrane, and it's going to connect the visceral and the parietal peritoneum. It's like a double peritoneum. So let's look. They're basically being used to suspend the organs. So let's look at a couple here. I should also say in these mesenteries, right? So here we see the stomach kind of hanging from the liver. It's holding the stomach in place, but these mesenteries are also carrying things like blood vessels, nerves, lymphatic vessels, and so this is going to be an important component as well, right? You already had like superior mesenteric artery and inferior mesenteric artery. Those are getting carried in mesenteries. Okay, so let's look at a couple. So this one here that's holding the stomach to the liver, it's very short. We'll look for a lot of these structures in the lab doing dissections. This is called the lesser omentum. So it's on the lesser curvature of the stomach connected up to the liver. On the greater curvature, the outside, the bottom of the stomach, we see the greater omentum. And this is a big apron of adipose tissue that hangs off the stomach. Almost all of you asked me about this during dissection, right? Like, what is all this fat that's in the stomach of my cat? Can I take that out? No. Hold on to that. It's the greater omentum. We're going to talk about it, okay? And so here it is. It's just a big apron of adipose. Let's see, who else do we have in here? So transverse mesocolon. So this is the large intestine, the transverse portion of the large intestine. And so transverse mesocolon is going to be suspending that, suspending the large intestine. Here we see, and again, here's our color coding. This is pretty cool. They made it purple because the parietal peritoneum is blue and the visceral peritoneum we can see here is red. And so when it's both, it's purple. So this one here is called mesentery proper. It's spreading out to all the intestines. Small intestines. So when you pick up the small intestines, and you'll do this week, and kind of hold them up, you can see all the blood vessels, and they're going to be in this thin sheet. That is mesentery proper. So that suspends the small intestine. Who am I forgetting here? Oh, just the falciform ligament, which isn't showing up here. It's going to hold the top of the liver, right? So here's this is the falciform ligament. It stabilizes the liver to the diaphragm. Don't know why your book doesn't show it. Or they're calling it the coronary ligament. Maybe that's another name for falciform. Okay, so those are the mesenteries. Okay, when we get the parietal peritoneum and the visceral peritoneum together. Okay. So then we need to look at the histology of the digestive tract. So as you follow the digestive tract, regardless of what portion you are in, you are going to see these 4 layers. So the mucosa, the submucosa, the muscularis, and the serosa. Those are your 4 layers. So let's start with the mucosa. So this is the innermost layer, and this is going to be an epithelium with a areolar connective tissue underneath of it. So, and that's what they call the lamina propria. That's the areolar connective tissue. So here's our epithelium, right? That's going to vary depending what region we're in, and then the areolar connective tissue. There's also a thin layer here you see of muscle called the muscularis mucosa, and so that's to point out that it's a thin muscle layer right on the mucosal layer, not to be confused with the huge bands of muscle that you're going to see out in muscularis externa. So muscularis mucosa is part of this mucosal layer. So the epithelium I mentioned is changing. And what we're going to see is that in the oral cavity and the pharynx and the esophagus, it is going to be a stratified squamous epithelium, right? We need a tough, multi-layered epithelium to protect us from tortilla chips. All the way, have you gotten one down the esophagus before? Right? Stratified squamous epithelium. Once we move into the stomach, what we're going to see, actually stomach, small intestine, and large intestine. So we can just group that all together. You're going to see simple columnar epithelium. Kind of embedded in there, we have a variety of cells called enteroendocrine cells. So entero is going to tell you we're dealing with the GI tract, particularly, I think that more is like small intestine. So endocrine hormones, so enteroendocrine cells. There are actually going to be quite a few cells here in the digestive tract that are producing hormones, but a lot of these are a lot more, it's like paracrine factors, right? Things that are pretty localized. There are some true hormones as well. The one that comes to mind offhand is one called cholecystokinin. So when fats hit your small intestine, that hormone is released, CCK, and it triggers the gallbladder to release the bile that we need in order to digest lipids, right? So there is hormonal control going on throughout this as well. In this lamina propria, the areolar connective tissue, keep in mind also, and they don't show it in here, going to be a lot of things like blood vessels, lymph, exocrine glands, and also some really important nerves are going to be in here. Yeah, scratch that. Just there are nerves, right? But blood, nerves, lymph, smooth muscle, we see there in that muscularis mucosa. Okay, let's move on to the submucosa. So the submucosa, they're like, there's not a lot going on here. Really, it's dense, irregular connective tissue. So it's just binding the mucosa to that muscularis layer. In here, right, blood vessels, lymph, exocrine glands, right? They're showing those glands being embedded back in here, which of course are then going to have ducts releasing to that epithelial layer. So this is, oh no, that works. I was going to say there's also a series of nerves, and it's called the submucosal plexus. And so they're showing that these nerves are part of the submucosa. They're just including it in this whole region called the enteric plexus. And so the enteric nervous system is basically the nervous system of the digestive tract. It's one we don't talk about that often, but there's actually as many neurons in your digestive tract as there are in the spinal cord, right? There's a lot going on here. I think we probably have a lot more to learn about this, and we might get a better understanding of some more intestinal disorders. I'm sorry, while I'm here, because I just heard myself pronounce this, it is the digestive tract, which sounds a lot like digestive tract, which would be CK. And I just really wanted to point out tract with a T at the end. Spell that one right for me, because misspelling that one looks bad. Okay, submucosa. Sorry, tangent. I saw someone do an interview and misspell that, and I was just like, no, okay. Muscularis externa. So smooth muscle, right? Digestive tract should make you think smooth muscle. And in the digestive tract, it's going to be in multiple different layers. So they've done a nice job here of showing the inner layer is this circular layer, right? It's wrapping around the tube. And then the outer layer in muscularis externa is this longitudinal layer that runs the length of the tube. And really by having this inner circular band, outer longitudinal band, this is what lets us run peristalsis. So that wave-like contraction where we can propel food through the tube. You do have cells in the digestive tract that are able to spontaneously depolarize, right? They have a leaky resting membrane potential, right? And they're actually able to contract on their own. You do have, right, we're looking here at the submucosal plexus, and of course, we're about to talk about the myenteric plexus, because that's the one that is innervating this muscle. So the enteric nervous system is considered a branch of the autonomic nervous system, and primarily the innervation that you're looking at here in the digestive tract is from the autonomic I already said the autonomic nervous system, particularly the parasympathetic nervous system, right? So remember, sympathetic is fight or flight, parasympathetic is rest and digest, right? And so it's the parasympathetic nervous system that really increases the muscle tone, increases the activity here in the GI tract. Okay, and then our final layer is the serosa. This is the same as saying visceral peritoneum, right? So in fact, here they're showing that mesentery when we have multiple layers going on there, right? But what we're looking at here is the connective tissue and a thin simple squamous epithelium, visceral peritoneum or serosa, right? This is the picture from my previous text. I actually like your picture. It's pretty good. And they're showing you the same thing here, right? So again, epithelial lining as part of the mucosa. They're pointing out, let's see if I can find, there's the oh, here we go, mucosa, submucosa. I like this picture. Look at all the blood vessels, lymphatics, nerves, right? There's the submucosal plexus. Kind of nice to see from this angle, the glands that are embedded in there. Muscularis externa, again, a circular layer and a longitudinal layer. There's the myenteric plexus. So again, submucosal plexus is the nerves in the submucosa. Myenteric is in the muscularis layer. The serosa, again, also called the visceral peritoneum. So whichever picture you like more, this has some neat aspects. So does this one. Go with whatever works. Okay, so that's the histology. So then the last thing I really want to talk about in this video, because this is getting long already, is the control of the digestive system. And again, I stole this from my old book, but look at what we got here. Okay, so we've got local factors. And so the thing to keep in mind are the different things going on in the digestive tract are going to help signal the need for control. So pH, the volume, chemical composition. So for example, the volume, like as the stomach fills and starts to stretch, that immediately stimulates the contraction on a local level. Like we're not even worried about sending a message to the brain or something like that. The chemical composition, right? The same thing. Even like a specific nutrient can basically act as the stimulus to coordinate the response at this local level, at the organ level. Now, we do also need more control. And so who do we turn to? Of course, the nervous system and the endocrine system. And so again, when we think about the neural control here, we're talking about the enteric nervous system, right? Again, part of the autonomic nervous system. And so what they're showing us here, right, is that things like that myenteric plexus, the nerves that are embedded in this muscularis externa layer, that's going to be really important. This innervation is really important for peristalsis to occur properly. This, again, is influenced by the parasympathetic side of the nervous system. So you get action potentials coming from the CNS to help stimulate movement of the GI tract. And then really with hormones, again, I mentioned those enteroendocrine cells that are releasing hormones. Here they're pointing out there's at least 18 different hormones. They can move through the bloodstream, right? So again, lipids hit the small intestine, cholecystokinin travels through the blood to the gallbladder, right? So it doesn't have to go that far, but it is truly a hormone. It's produced in one location and it's traveling to a different organ. The big thing I would say with hormonal control is that a lot of the way it works is actually the hormones causing an increased sensitivity to neural control, right? Like, hey, pay attention to what the nervous system is saying. Okay, but those are our 3 levels of control. That's it for this one.